Hey everyone, and welcome back to this new episode of the Linux and Open Source News Show. This week we've got Red Hat being slowly absorbed by IBM, and apparently conditions there are just not that great. We also have BcacheFS's plan to survive outside of the Linux kernel. We've got the release of KDE's official distro in its alpha form, and we've got Firefox tacking on more features onto the browser, but they're all AI, ads, or Google related, so we'll talk about that. So we have some pretty bad news about Red Hat. While we mostly all know that the IBM-owned Red Hat is not the Red Hat some of us learned to like way back in the day, it seems like things are actually pretty bad there right now. First, most of the support staff is going to be moved away from Red Hat into IBM to consolidate stuff like HR, finance, accounting, and legal. This is generally a move you tend to see when a company is slowly being absorbed as a business unit instead of functioning like a subsidiary. And obviously, this tends to come with less and less control from the company itself over their own activities. An internal memo confirms that, saying that in early 2026, these employees will be IBM employees, not Red Hat employees. But also, some people reported that the Red Hat culture is now entirely dead. This was written in a Reddit post that didn't seem to contain anything too bad, but it was removed by a moderator on the Red Hat subreddit, so we can't really check it out anymore. The post stated that there's nothing left of the open culture of Red Hat, that employees are now micromanaged, that middle management knows nothing about the actual work being done, and that it's basically yet another tech company that doesn't understand its mission. Now, of course, that post could be fake, it could have been written by anybody not working at Red Hat, but the fact that it was deleted means that it probably struck a nerve, and it seems to really be in agreement with everything we know coming out of Red Hat. The company just doesn't function as it once did, and it's evident by the way it handles, for example, the GPL, tacking on some additional restrictions for their clients, and basically going against the spirit of open source for a bunch of things. They are still a major contributor to Linux, GNOME, and a bunch of other systems, but it is very clear that the company is headed in a direction where it's not going to be a company, but it's just going to be a business unit inside IBM, and this can't really be looked at anything other than a big problem. Now, KDE Linux got its first alpha. The official KDE distro had a soft launch a few weeks ago, basically saying don't try it out yet, it's not ready. It is still not ready because it's an alpha, but at least it is intended to be tested by people. So I took a quick look at it in a video this week. But if you want the TLDR, it is based on Arch, but it's not Arch, so you don't get a package manager, the AUR, or anything like that. It is relatively stable, but it doesn't run on non-UEFI computers, it doesn't support the proprietary NVIDIA drivers, you cannot load external kernel modules either, Secure Boot isn't supported. All of those questions and more were addressed by Nate Graham. For example, why are you releasing yet another distro? Which obviously in this case doesn't really make sense because KDE does need a way to distribute their desktop as they intended, with full control over the entire distro base to not depend on whether a distro agrees with their choices or not. And also, why do that when you already have KDE Neon, which apparently is only held together by one person at the moment and just isn't suited for the goals KDE set out for themselves. So the whole KDE Linux distro is built as system images, and you obviously keep the last 5 images so you can reboot on a stable system if an update doesn't work properly. It is all based on BetterFS, on Wayland, on Pipewire, Flatpak, and systemd, so it is a modern distro through and through. The OS itself is also built using Flatpak Builder and KDE Builder. Snaps are supported as well out of the box, but only in the terminal for now. And of course you have DistroBox to install containers and software that wouldn't be available on Flatpaks. You also have Homebrew and systemd system extensions if you really need to add more stuff on top of the OS. It is a pretty cool project. If you want to learn more about it, I do have a dedicated video on the channel. The link is in the description, or it's the video published right before this one. It's a pretty fun project. I don't really see a use case for myself, honestly, or for beginners, or for hardware manufacturers right now. It's just way too limited and convoluted to use, but it does have potential. Now this week the Budgie desktop got a minor update addressing some of the changes that GNOME 49 introduced. Budgie is still currently based on GNOME, so they do have to go along with the changes in there, or at least deal with them, which is also why they wanted to move away from GTK and GNOME. So they forked a few components that are deprecated in GNOME 49 so they can keep using them in Budgie. These includes some GNOME settings daemon related stuff, specifically for media keys, power, and Wacom tablets. They also applied a few changes to the window manager, to the XFCE4 library that they use for Wayland and X11 compatibility, and to their control center to handle these changes. What's more interesting is not that small update, it's the fact that nothing is really happening for the next major version of Budgie, at least not publicly. The last "Let's talk about what we're doing" blog post dates back to January. So either Budgie is sort of marinating in a state of abandon, or they're hard at work on it but aren't communicating at all. Budgie 10.10, the transition release, was intended to ship in the first quarter of 2025. We're now closing in on the fourth quarter. As per Budgie 11, they never gave a release date, and I would expect this is as far away as can be as well. We'll see where it evolves, but I am really worried about Budgie right now. There's been literally zero official or public communication that I could find on Budgie 10.10, which was supposed to be a stopgap release, Wayland only, to transition to Budgie 11, which would be rewritten with an entirely new library and stack. Presumably the Cosmic libraries, I would say, because that's sort of what they hinted at, but maybe I'm misremembering this. They looked at Enlightenment for a while, but it does feel like this was not what they're going to go with in the end. Their public repos don't show any sign of work really on this kind of stuff. Their entire Budgie board also doesn't seem to show any signs of movement. So I'm really wondering, where is Budgie right now? If you have insider info about it, or if you're actually contributing to Budgie, let me know if there's a place where I can check that development happening, because right now I cannot find anything, and it is kind of worrying for the state of that desktop. Now, most of us Firefox users or Firefox Forks users asked Mozilla for more features, and they're complying, although I do have a feeling this will be perceived as malicious compliance, because first, Firefox is working on Page Buddy or Page Assist, which is a local AI tool that lets you ask questions about the web page you're currently reading, in case you couldn't read it yourself. It's currently only in the nightly builds, it's not really working right now, but it's clearly something that they want to offer in the future, powered by the same local model that offers link preview summaries in Firefox. The idea here is you just call on that assistant in the web page and it will answer questions about it, which you probably could have answered yourself by just, reading the web page, I guess. Firefox is also working on billboard format ads in the new tab page, so yay for more ads in the browser. Google search trends will also be displayed on the new tab page apparently, also yay. And more useful stuff, support for JPEG XL, support for MKV video playback, also the half-baked web app support that they're working on, and Google Lens, which might actually be useful. You can just right-click an image inside of the web browser and use Google Lens to search for results that are related to that specific image. And apparently you can also plug in any other search engine that would have an equivalent to Google Lens, so it's not like it's a Google-centric feature. But there is telemetry linked to that Google Lens feature. That's a new context menu entry, and so they will log the amount of times people used it and send that number to Google, so they have data to renew the search deal that is now allowed again by the US. Now, I know I'm being all sarcastic and snarky about Firefox, but this is because the features they're adding are all the features I personally do not want to see on Linux or on my computer. I don't want ads, I don't want more big tech integration, and I certainly don't want AI at all. So adding all of this in Firefox makes me really want to stop using even a Firefox fork. Because even though Florp, that I use currently, removes a bunch of that stuff, some of it is still bleeding through, including some AI sidebars and whatever else. I don't want that on my computer. It feels like Firefox was the only real competitor to Chromium, but it also feels like doing that kind of stuff will turn away the people who actually still used Firefox, and we're all just going to end up using a Chromium-based browser. I know I'm probably going to do that. Now, Firefox is also deprecating 32-bit entirely. This is not unexpected, it's not a big deal. Most other browsers had already abandoned 32-bit entirely. Chrome ditched it as early as 2016, so it's only normal that Firefox removes support for it. It all boils down to maintenance problems. The older code base is getting harder and harder to maintain. First, because you need a 32-bit Linux distro to test that 32-bit code to run on, and most Linux distros simply do not support 32-bit anymore, outside of running 32-bit stuff on a 64-bit system. Also, some features might make use of libraries, frameworks, or might be written with more recent instruction sets in mind than what 32-bit systems can handle. So Firefox 145 will drop 32-bit support. If you still absolutely need that, you will need to stick to Firefox 144 for as long as it's supported with security fixes, or Firefox 140 ESR, which will receive updates until September 2026. After that, you will have to move to another browser, if any keep having updates for 32-bit systems. I think it is entirely normal to ditch 32-bit systems entirely. It is not a question of if we should do it, it's the question of when we should actually finish doing it. Now, removing support for 32-bit native is fine, I think. Removing support for 32-bit running on a 64-bit system is still pretty premature, as we've seen with Ubuntu and Fedora's efforts to try and dish it. They all had to walk back some of that because it was just way too early. Speaking of Ubuntu, they got a small outage on their repo servers, namely the ones that handle security fixes and also the general archive.ubuntu.com. The outage only lasted for 36 minutes, but it was enough to break updates for people for a few days, because many requests to the servers were backlogged and took days to be resolved once the servers got back online. Now, this created updates failure, of course, which aren't that big of a problem, but also install failures, because if you try to install with updates added at the install process, well, stuff would fail. And of course, any Ubuntu-based distro was affected as well. They generally just rely on Ubuntu's repos anyway. Now, the status pages for these servers also didn't really reflect the problem, because they only showed that the servers were out for about half an hour, when in reality, in the real world, for users, the outage was there for multiple days because the server just did not respond to your requests. And this is not a major problem in itself, it's just a few updates that are delayed, a few installs that failed that you could just retry by just not downloading the updates automatically. It's fine, but it does highlight how Ubuntu is still a major player in the Linux scene. I know a lot of people like to mock Ubuntu, saying it's like for noobs and it's stupid and no one uses it. That's just not true. Ubuntu is a major Linux distro. Just because its gaming market share is falling a little bit doesn't mean no one uses it. It is still absolutely massive, and a bunch of distros are still reliant on it. When Ubuntu catches a cold, a lot of Linux systems start sneezing all across the world. Now, as BcacheFS is now externally maintained, meaning the version that is in the kernel is fixed and won't receive updates, well, they have to find another way to provide users with updates. And this, of course, will go through DKMS to have an automatically built module that users or distros can tack onto the kernel. Just like the official NVIDIA drivers and many other drivers as well, it is likely the best way to handle that kind of situation. So now it is of course up to distributions to decide if they want to include a package for BcacheFS and if they want to include that in the ISO as well, so you can actually install the distro with a BcacheFS system. Apparently, both Debian and OpenSUSE wanted to completely disable BcacheFS from their kernels with a config switch, but apparently the main developer of BcacheFS managed to have them hold off on that until the DKMS packages are ready, and there will also be a second component needed, which is BcacheFS tools, which are the user space tools that you use to interact with BcacheFS itself. This will also need an up-to-date package, so distros will have 2 different packages to maintain and handle, but this should be fine, I think. So, of course, the externally maintained status of BcacheFS doesn't outright kill the project, as long as the developer can forge some partnerships and discussions with distros to make sure that BcacheFS is still included in various distributions, even though it's not straight in the Linux kernel. Hopefully, as time goes on, that developer matures a little bit and learns to work with others instead of always trying to butt heads with everyone else. And maybe at some point that file system can be added back into the kernel because it looks like a cool one, and it sucks that people are deprived of it just because the developer acts like a kid. Now next, we've got an interesting potential standard. The co-founder of RSS, the RSS feed standard, has a new project, this time called RSL, for Real Simple Licensing. It has nothing really to do with the goals of RSS this time. The aim is to provide a machine-readable licensing agreement for online content, specifically that AI companies or AI crawlers could read, could understand, and then make an informed decision on whether they are allowed to grab that content and train on it and add it to their dataset, or if they are not allowed to do it and then presumably fully ignore it and still use it anyway. Reddit, O'Reilly, Ziff Davis, Quora, and Yahoo are all backing that protocol. But of course, unless actual AI firms that develop these AI bots decide to agree to use it, there's no chance it will serve any purpose. The way it works is the content provider, so the website for example, adds the terms of the licensing agreement for every part of the website to their robots.txt file in a specific format. And when the AI bots crawl the website, they are now informed of what they have the rights to and what they don't have the rights to. RSL would also have a licensing organization called the RSL Collective that would help negotiate royalties and licensing deals for that content, which is where the money comes in for the creator of RSL. They presumably would get some kickback from negotiating these deals, although companies and content providers are entirely allowed to negotiate their own deals outside of the RSL Collective, even if they decide to use the RSL standard. I am all for this kind of standard. I think it would be nice to be able to say, hey, my content is up for grabs, not up for grabs, or up for grabs for anyone who signed up for this specific deal and pays me the right amount of money to use it. I just don't think AI companies will really agree to that because their entire business model relies on having content for free, repackaging it, rewriting it, and serving it back to users in a different form. If they have to pay for all the content they train their AI on, then they're probably not going to be able to profit from that. It's just going to be too expensive compared to what they can give out, so I don't think they want to strike that, and once again, probably only big publishers will have the ability to enforce compliance with the deals and actually sue AI companies if they use their content without being authorized. Small content creators, unless they're part of a big network or a big platform that represents them, will probably have no say in this anyway. Still on the topic of AI, apparently GitHub users are starting to get fed up with Copilot being forced down their throat onto every single part of GitHub. The second most popular or upvoted discussion on GitHub's discussion spaces forums is a bug report that aims to let people disable Copilot code reviews because some users are getting really annoyed with the automatically generated issues and pull requests. These questions remain unanswered by Microsoft and by GitHub. Now, you might wonder what is the problem with these AI-generated issues. First, those issues generate more work. You have to deal with these bogus issues as exposed by curl's maintainer. Most of these AI-generated reports are baseless, they're just spam. They don't give you any information, they sometimes don't even describe a bug. Second, some of the people behind these complaints to Microsoft also have the same concerns with AI as I do, namely that this thing just trains on their code without authorization, but also that it trains on other people's code and might replicate verbatim some source code that requires attribution. The problem is, GitHub waives away all liability in the case this happens, meaning that licensing-wise, if you use AI-generated code, it is up to you, the developer, to check if you have the rights to use that code and if it has been reproduced from any other repo out there, which is functionally impossible to do. To avoid that, plenty of projects have just banned AI-generated code like FreeBSD, Gen2, NetBSD, QEMU, Servo, and more. Now, the real solution is quite simple though. You can just move away from GitHub. You have plenty of other options that are either self-hosted or you'll have to pay a little bit for, but as always, quality, independence, and control does come with a cost. I'm sure some projects just simply cannot move away from GitHub, it's just not feasible, but I've worked at companies big and small, on software projects big and small, with distributed teams across the country. We always used GitLab and we never encountered any issues, so I'm sure GitLab is up to snuff for 99% of projects out there. Another thing that is good enough, even better than that, is our sponsor, Tuxedo Computers. You all know about them by now. They make laptops and desktops that ship with Linux pre-installed. They have a healthy selection of base distros, but of course, as demonstrated by my latest video on YouTube, you can absolutely slap any distro you want on that and it will run well on the hardware. They have a big choice of devices with plenty of form factors, plenty of weights, plenty of price points, and plenty of performance points as well. You can pick the hardware inside your laptop or your desktop. You can even customize the keyboard layout or the logo. Tuxedo Computers is all I use these days. Everything you see or hear from me is made on one of their laptops, the Infinity Book Pro 16. It's an older generation one, but it still runs like a dream. And all my gaming needs are served by their Tuxedo Cube. I actually just finished Indiana Jones and the Great Circle on that thing, and that was fantastic. So, if you need a new computer, you want to run Linux on it, and you want to support a company that actively contributes to Linux, then you know where to go. The link is in the description. Anyway, this will conclude today's episode. You know what to do with all the usual YouTube buttons, the comment section. Please do click on those. Please do leave a comment because it really helps the channel. YouTube has been really bad recently. They changed something in the algorithm. We're just not getting the views we once did. So please don't hesitate to click those buttons to let YouTube know that the channel still exists. And as always, you have all the links to all the articles I used to write the show in the description. And you have links, of course, to different ways of supporting the channel. Thank you all for watching, and I guess you'll see me in the next one. Bye!